Konnichiwa. Welcome to another episode of Just Listen to Yourself with Kira Davis. I am your host, Kira Davis. And of course, this is the podcast where I ask you to take some of your favorite talking points and draw them out to their logical conclusion. We've done a number of subjects on this podcast so far. And last week we started abortion, the topic of abortion. And I labeled it part 1 because I'm pretty sure this is going to be a 2-parter, maybe a 3-parter, depending on how time goes today. I want to thank everybody for your support so far. It's been an exciting debut month for Just Listen to Yourself on the FCB radio network. And next week you can hear me on with some of my station partners, my station siblings, the Todd Allen Show, and I'm really looking forward to talking with them over there. And of course, FCB also has a music side and entertainment side, and so they've got a couple of hot new artists they're producing out in Cleveland. We got one young man named Aaron Malik is really burning it up there in Cleveland. So I'm really proud to be a part of this family, and thank you for allowing that, for listening. If you weren't listening, I couldn't do this. I couldn't do this with these great people. So thank you so much. I'm going to be starting a Patreon page this week. And on that Patreon page, you'll have the opportunity to support some exclusive content. I'll give you video content. I'll take your questions personally and answer them personally. And maybe we'll just do some other fun stuff. Let me turn this mix down here. Hang on. So you'll have an opportunity to interact with me directly on the Patreon page. I'm looking forward to that. And of course, follow me on Twitter at realkiradavis, or head over to my Facebook page. I'm thinking about maybe starting a Facebook page that's just for this podcast because there are so many great discussions that go on around this. I want to hear more, and I don't know that people want to be on my political page because I am the editor at large for Red State, and so a lot of political articles go up, a lot of my own articles go up that I write every day. So you might not be interested in that, and I don't want you to be. I don't want this to be about politics, even though I do tackle political subjects. I really do just want this to be about thinking. And we've been thinking about abortion, so let's keep going with that subject. I don't want to take up too much time in this first part because the time goes by fast. Y'all know I don't like to keep this podcast running too long. I do get long-winded. Last week, we talked about the issue of saying you're pro-life but pro-choice, or being pro-choice but pro-life. I suggest you go back and listen to that episode. It was a really great one. It's funny when you say like your own stuff is great. I was brilliant on last week's podcast. I actually made some points I'm very proud of. So go back, take a listen. Maybe you want to do it before you get into this one if you haven't heard it, because I'll be making some arguments that kind of piggyback, and I don't want you to be like, well, what about this? What about that? Go back and listen and then hit this one. So last week we talked about what it means to be pro-life versus pro-choice, and I actually broke it down all the way to the bottom of where does life begin, and I said that is really the one question that has to be answered before anyone can have a discussion about abortion. So I talked about where I think life begins, and I talked about reasoning that out, and I addressed some of the questions that people have or some of the talking points that people make around that subject. This week I wanted to talk about the question, what about the child's life, Kira? So a lot of people will say, I support abortion, not because I'm really excited about kids dying, but I'm thinking of the type of life that this mom has, and I'm thinking about the type of life this child is going to lead, and it's not going to be a good life. It's not going to be a good life. So the abortion is, compassionate, because not only is a child who is going to be born into a terrible circumstance, a circumstance where their mother can't support them, or maybe it's abuse or poverty or whatever. Not only is that child going to suffer that, but then that child's probably going to end up in the, kindergarten to prison pipeline, and we're going to end up bearing the cost of that child in some way. So to spare society that cost and to spare that child a terrible life that the child's going to have, and no one's going to help the child, then that's why we support abortion. I hear that argument a lot. I'm sure you've heard it. Maybe you've even made it. I have made it in the past thinking that it was an argument on the side of compassion. But I would like you to think about what you're really saying when you say that. And I would like to submit to you that it's actually a very cruel argument. What's going to happen to the child? This is personal for me. I was having a conversation just the other night about being biracial and about my parents' experience, the way that my mom has told it to me, and about meeting my dad meeting my mom's parents. My dad is black, and my dad's black and American, and my mom's white and Canadian. And they often were stopped at the border trying to see each other because it was so weird that they were together. My dad was arrested at the border trying to see my mom. And we talked about what it was like for him to meet my upper middle class grandparents. My grandfather was a pilot in the Air Force. And my grandmother was a homemaker, and my mom was like their dirty hippie child that ran away and was like, I don't want to be middle class. I want to be poor my whole life. And so introducing him to them, they were obviously, everyone eventually figured it out. But in the beginning, this would have been the late 60s, early 70s. It'd been the early 70s. In the beginning, it made them nervous for that time period. And one of the questions that would always come up is, what about the kids? What about your kids? You would always hear that back in the day about interracial relationships. I don't mind interracial relationship, but what about the kids' life? What's their life going to be like? And I always thought that was so strange. I always thought that was such an odd thing to ask, to be concerned about. Partly because I was already here. So whenever I hear people ask that question, I'm like, well, hey, I'm waving my hand like, hey, I'm here. Like, what about the kids? Okay, this kid made it. And I guess my life wasn't easy. I grew up on a rural island in Canada where I was the only black person that most people had ever seen. And I experienced, I guess we would call it today, horrific racism. But let's just say that I've been called the N-word more times than I can count in my life. So it was that kind of existence. I lived with an abusive stepfather. I lived in poverty. I had a tough life, I guess, but I had a life. And it didn't occur to me to think like, oh, it would have been better for my parents not to have me because what about the children? And that's what I hear when I hear people say, what about the type of life this child is going to have? My response is, that doesn't seem like a very good argument for not letting someone live. What about the type of life they're going to have? What about it? What do we know about it? My parents knew some things. They knew that it was going to be hard for me to grow up in a place like Canada at a time, and in a place where we lived at that time. They knew that I would struggle with how I looked and how other people looked at me. They didn't know that they would divorce and that my mom would move in with a guy who hated me and who was cruel and cold and scary. They didn't know that. They also didn't know that I would graduate high school and then graduate college, and then I would marry a wonderful man, and we would have, do you see what I mean? We would have 2 kids. We have a family. There are all these things about my life that they couldn't predict. And as a matter of fact, my life today, I would say, is pretty good. I live in the greatest country on earth, in the most beautiful state in the Union, California. Crazy politics, beautiful landscape. I have 2 really amazing, intelligent, healthy children who people like. They're not little jerks. I always said I don't want to raise no stupid kids, and I don't want to raise no bad kids. They're good kids. We like them. We're going to keep them. And I have a husband who's a great partner, and we've been together. We've been married for 20 years, and we're a good example to our kids about, what marriage is and commitment. We've sewed back into our communities. We've done all kinds of stuff. My life is good, you guys. And I have a show on the FCB Radio Network. I mean, does it get better than that? My life is really good. But there were so many times when my life was very, very bad. And I was sad and hurt and alone and scared and pretty convinced that I would die. You know, there were times when I just was like, I don't see myself making it to adulthood. I don't see it. And I did, though. That's the thing. I did. So when you say, you know, what about the child's life? Yeah, what about their life? What about their life? How is it going to look when they're 15, 20, 25, then 30, and then 35? Is it really up to us to decide how much value that life is going to have, to decide if that life is going to be worth living? And I understand that you're saying it. This is compassion, Kira. I care about this. I'm blowing my own mind. I haven't even gotten this argument out and I'm blowing my own mind with it. I just short-circuited for a second there. I'm so sorry. You can look at a kid and say, you know, I'm being compassionate, Kira. This child is going to suffer. This child's going to have a bad life. But what you're saying, listen to yourself. What you're saying is, this child's life might be bad, so I think it's better if we just don't give it a life at all. That's the argument. That is what the argument is. You might not think that that's what you mean, but you have to listen to yourself. That's what you're saying. What you're saying is this child's life might be bad. And depending on the person you're talking about, the odds might be really high that they're going to have a bad life. I mean, we've seen some terrible child abuse cases in this country, right? It happens every day. We maybe even know some of those people. So, yeah, that's like a valid fear. Absolutely. That's a valid fear. But to me, what you're saying is, this child is better off dead. I don't know about you, but I don't really feel comfortable making that decision for a child. You know, it's one thing, I guess, if some guy like rapes a grandma and then cuts her head off and gets put on death row, and then I can be like, well, all right, you know, not a huge fan of the death penalty, but he's probably not, you know, gonna lead a very productive life around here. That's one thing to say that. But for a baby, I really don't feel comfortable with saying whose life is going to be worth what. And that's what you're saying when you say, look, a woman should be able to have an abortion because abortion is compassionate for the child. But I don't see that as a valid argument. You're making a couple of judgments that are that I find alarming. You're judging. You're already putting a value on that child's life. You've already made a judgment about what their life will be worth. So you've decided that if they are born, their life will be worth less because they'll be in a terrible circumstance. They'll be abused or neglected or undereducated, whatever you're imagining for that child. You've said that. And you're also saying that you're also predicting what that child's future is going to be like. You're also making a predictor about who that child will become and what burden they will place on you. And that is also not a good way to look at children. I will use myself as an example again. I could not imagine not being here. I did not have a great life. I had a fine, to me, it's fine. Y'all, I don't want to sound like I'm feeling sorry for myself. To me, my life was fine. Like, I made it out of childhood. It's fine. I'm a 45-year-old woman now. Like, I'm good. All right. Don't worry about me. I'm just saying, like, these are the circumstances that I came from. And I think by today's standards, my childhood would seem horrific to most people. But most people these days are so weak and wishy-washy. So I do say I had I'll use the word horrific, but I'm only using it for you. I don't think of my life as horrific. I'm fine. Everything is fine. It worked out. Anyways, I'll use myself as an example. Yes, I had some horrible moments in my childhood. Yes, I suffered. Yes, I'm sure my mom suffered with having to watch me suffer. You know, it was difficult for us both many times. But we also had really good times together. And B, I became a productive member of society. Somebody who, and I'm not just talking about being a taxpayer, but I had a religious conversion when I was a teenager, and it really made me want to care about people more than I did. And I've volunteered with my time, and I've tried to raise my kids to be those people. We've sewed back into the community. Like, there are a lot of things that I was inspired to do because of how I lived as a child, because of my hard life. I guess what I'm saying is that steel can only be sharpened by steel. You can't sharpen steel with wool. You can't sharpen steel with a ball of cotton. You can't sharpen steel with marshmallows. You need steel. And the part of the reason why we see so many wishy-washy young people in today's society who can't seem to get it together, sleeping on mom's couch till they're 30, don't understand the value of a dollar, don't know how to hustle. To us, they might look lazy and unmotivated, but we have taken away all of their challenges. And now we're saying abort the ones that are going to have challenges. So soon, no one's going to ever have any challenges. This is America. We already live so well here. We live so well, we make up things to complain about. We live so well. We make up issues to get offended about because we feel like we're supposed to be. But we've just raised an entire generation of people who are without challenges, who get the participation trophy. They've removed all kinds of school standards. You're not allowed to cheer too much when you play sports. Every word you say has got to be carefully calculated and weighed to see who is going to offend and who it's going to hurt. And then if you do hurt someone or offend someone, you've got to apologize right away. Everything's fair. And my kids, when my kids were in kindergarten and first grade, in their classroom, they had to, if you were going to give a birthday invitation out, you had to give one out to everybody. So they weren't even allowed to socially interact the way that kids learn how to do, which is finding your groups, finding your tribe, finding your people. We've taken away all the challenges, but it's the challenges that make us great people. Well, Kira, what about a kid that's going to be born into a horrific incestuous family and get raped every day? That sounds horrible. That sounds horrible. And I can imagine if you were living in that circumstances that you would have many days where you wish you were dead. And I still do not believe I should be allowed to predict what that child's life will turn into and who that child will turn into. Who will she be? Maybe she'll be somebody who manages to get out, to get right, to get educated, and to help other women get out of that lifestyle, to help other scared young girls, or to help families. Or maybe she just gets really rich and she just spends a lot of money trying to make people's lives better. Or maybe she finds the cure for cancer. I don't know. We have a lot of problems we're trying to fix in this society. We want to cure cancer. We want to cure AIDS. We want to cure heart disease. We want to cure diabetes. We want flying cars. I want my flying car. We want so many things. We need so many things. And how many of the solutions have we killed? Because we just couldn't predict who they would be. I don't think it's a valid argument to say a child should not be born because a child will suffer. You're making a lot of judgment calls for that kid's life that you don't have the place to make. The greatest people, the people who have changed this world, have been born to the worst circumstances. It doesn't work the other way around. Do you know what happens when you get a kid? Do you know who you get when you get a kid who never has to face a challenge, who never has to spend a day hungry, who has a silver spoon in their mouth, who never has to face any adversity, who never has to be hurt by their environment or their circumstances? Do you know who that kid turns out to be? Paris Hilton. Do you want a generation of Paris Hiltons? You want that vapid, sort of not really there, not really connecting kind of personality? Oh, well, at least they didn't suffer much. Who's Paris Hilton going to lead out of chains? What disease is Paris Hilton going to cure? What kids is Paris Hilton going to teach? What girl is Paris Hilton going to counsel? Your life has value simply because you are living it and you are the only one that can live it. No one else can do it. And yet we are saying that we have the right to judge whether or not a life will be worth living. Maybe some won't be. Maybe some won't be worth living. I don't know which fetus is going to be the baby that cures cancer and which fetus is going to turn into a serial killer. I don't know this, and neither do you. It is not our place to decide that. For a child, what about the kids? I think back to that conversation that my parents probably had to have quite a few times with quite a few people, especially my mother. My dad left, but when my mom was pregnant, and I'm sure she had to do a lot of explaining. And what about the kids? Go back to what about the kids? Well, what about the kids? Here I am. And it was a tough life. It was tough. I never look back on my childhood and think, ooh, I wish I could do that again. A lot of tears and a lot of struggle. Some good times too. I'm glad to be here. I'm so glad to be here. What about the child's life? It's such a weird thing to hear because it's like, what are you saying? Do you think my life would have been better if I had just not lived it? I was born into all that suffering you're thinking about. And in these days, I gave you the worst examples of suffering, like someone living in like a rape house their whole life. But the justifications people make on this issue when it comes to the quality of life are much, much lower. Those standards are much, much lower. You'll have people saying that a child will suffer if they're just born into poverty, if they're just poor. Then they're just, if your mom makes minimum wage and the kid they call that suffering. So there's a lot of things we call suffering that isn't necessarily suffering. It's just like an undesirable life circumstance. But whatever, I will use your terms. I will follow your semantics. I can't, it blows my mind. I'm short circuiting again. I can't make the argument. It blows my mind that someone would look at me and say, I would be better off if my mom had just aborted me. Of course, no one is really looking at me and saying that because you would never look at a person who's alive and say, you should probably be dead. Or if you are that type of person, you need Jesus. Like, get some prayer. It's not healthy, all right? It's not okay. But that's the difference between how we talk about abortion and what abortion really is and what we really think of it. I think at the end of the day, if you actually dig a little deeper into your justifications on this issue, you'll find that you're pro-life too, because maybe some of you would, but I'm betting not, that there's nobody I'm going to meet in this audience face to face, shake your hand, and you're going to look at me and say, man, Kira, your childhood sounded horrible. I think it would have been better if you just hadn't been born at all. Now, we all have those days where we're like, I should have never been born. But beyond that, no, absolutely not. I love being alive. And look at all the people who are going to be alive because I got to live. Look at my father-in-law was scheduled for abortion. He was his mom's sixth child. And she was single, black, pregnant with her sixth child in rural Michigan in the 1940s. Uneducated. This was her sixth kid. Well, she tried to go to a local lady who did that kind of stuff to get the abortion, and it didn't take. And my father-in-law ended up being born. Victor Davis is his name. And Victor Davis is the patriarch of the Davis clan, and he is my husband's father. My children are Davises, and their children will be Davises of some sort. Maybe their names will change, but my point is that because Victor Davis is alive, there's this whole line of people. Oh, by the way, my kids are like 2 of, I think we're up to 16 grandkids and great-grandkids, by the way. So there's a whole group of people who are alive just because Vic got to live. Just because Vic Davis is alive. And Vic Davis, by the way, happens to be a really great person who served as an inner city pastor for 45 years, changed the lives of thousands of people, literally. You will not find one person who has met my father-in-law who doesn't love him and who he hasn't helped in some way. His life ended up having enormous value, enormous, unmeasurable, unquantifiable value. How could his mom have known that when she went for that abortion? Now, I know why. I know why Clara went for that abortion, right? She was scared and poor, and she knew that everyone was going to suffer more if this baby came. She knew that. And guess what? They did suffer. They suffered a lot. But they turned out to be incredible adults. I guess I can't speak for all the kids. I don't know how Dad's family all shook out in the end. You know, some people had their struggles, but then look at Dad. He's an amazing human being who has changed lives simply by the virtue of being alive. And then the frosting on that cake is that he actually spent his life serving other people. But because he lived, so many other people are living right now. And one of the people in this Davis line might be the person that finds the cure for Alzheimer's. We don't know, but it's not our judgment to make. So I don't find the argument tenable or logical that it's compassionate to abort a child because they might have a bad life. It's not up to you or me to decide whose life is going to be valuable after it comes. Is there an Abraham Lincoln if he's not born to a horrible mother? You know? Is there a Martin Luther King if he's not born into racial strife and poverty? Is there a Frederick Douglass if he hasn't overcome slavery and have to suffer for his whole life the slings and arrows of racists and his own community who were telling him what he was doing it the wrong way? Pick your person. Mother Teresa, the Dalai Lama, whoever, Madonna, whoever your person is that is the most influential in your life. Do we have that person if they have an easy, comfortable, smooth life? I'm going to bet that 90% of you, your answer is no. We cannot judge what life will be worth living. Well, Kira, you only care about the baby until it's born, and then you don't care about it afterwards. I'm going to put that talking point to rest. Normally, I like to just persuade you guys and let you guys make your own decision. But this is one talking point where I'm going to put my foot down and I'm going to say, enough. I don't want to hear it anymore. It is invalid and illogical. Okay? There are thousands of centers around this country. I know personally I've been in them. I have supported them with my career and with my money. And I have friends who run them. Personal friends that I know in real life who are real people that I can touch. And I can tell you that this country is filled with pregnancy centers who will stay by a mother and guide her through the second she knows she's pregnant until first grade. Oh, yes. First grade. As a matter of fact, I got a friend who just finished going out and doing some school shopping for the pregnancy center so they could have their back to school stuff for the moms. And they provide counseling and they provide services. They provide mentorships. They provide care for the kids. They provide free health care for the moms. Those places are out there. You go to a Planned Parenthood and the only thing they will tell you is to abort it. You want to talk about a place that doesn't care about the kid after they're born? That's Planned Parenthood. I don't know why. I don't understand this argument that like Planned Parenthood is some kind of saintly organization. And next week, because this is definitely going to a third part, we're going to talk about Planned Parenthood's foundations and why it is directly, it is a direct enemy of the Black community on purpose. We're going to talk about that. Some of you may already know, but I want to make this argument. I want to make that argument in relationship to who deserves to live and who deserves to die. I'll do that next week. But people who want to defend Planned Parenthood and want to call out pro-lifers talking about, oh, y'all don't care about the baby, once the baby's born. No. Well, how does Planned Parenthood duh. I guess Planned Parenthood is more compassionate because they abort the baby. Is that it? I'm going to guess that that's what you're saying to me, that they're more compassionate because they're aborting the baby so that way no one has to worry about it. Then it's nobody's problem. And then pro-lifers are saying, well, just have the baby and then whatever, then the baby's everybody's problem or whatever, which is not what we're saying. We're saying have the baby, and also here's some care. Here's an adoption facility. Here's a support facility. So if you want to keep your baby and raise your baby, which most women end up choosing to do, then we have your back. We'll help you become the mother that you know you can be. Those people are out there. They work every day and they get talked about so bad, and I just hate hearing that argument. You only care about the baby till they're born. That's not true. And what it says to me is you don't care. That's what when people use that argument, it says to me you actually don't volunteer with moms who need help. You actually don't give your time. You actually don't care. Because if you did, you'd be in this industry, you'd be in this business, and then you would know that statement is ridiculous, and that the pro-life industry is full of centers and programs that are dedicated to helping women, single mothers, raise the children that they kept instead of aborted. That there, you could throw a rock and hit one. They're everywhere. And the people who run them, they're not big celebrities and they don't want attention. They just want to help. So that's not even like an argument at all. That's literally just a talking point, and it's a lie. Don't say it anymore, okay? If you believe that it's true, then I suggest you start going out and helping some single moms, helping people. And then what you'll do is you'll find these resources that are there for them, and you'll start working in these communities, and you'll be like, oh yeah, it's full. It's full of people helping. I got a friend who lives in Los Angeles, runs a pregnancy care center there, and that woman will fly to Texas, fly to New York, fly to Florida, and pick up a baby. If she gets word that there's a mom in crisis for some reason, she'll go pick up the baby and she'll make arrangements for foster care, or she'll care for the baby until they can get the mother the help they need. That's what she does. You don't even know her name. I'm not going to tell it to you because she wouldn't want me to. She's the director of this center, and she's devoted her whole life to making sure that women who make the choice to keep their babies are supported in every way possible. And she's just one. She's just one of thousands. And what she's not saying is, your baby might have a bad life. It's better if you just abort it. It's better if you just make sure the baby was never born at all. That's what she's not saying, because she sees these women who come in and they're scared and they want abortion. A lot of times they want abortions, and they go to the pregnancy center and they realize, oh, this isn't a place where I get an abortion. In California, up until recently, it was a law that you still had to advertise for abortion services. You had to at least refer people. I think that's changed. But what happens is women go in there and they realize, oh, there's no services for abortion here, but they'll say, but let us take care of you. If you need some health care and you can't pay for it, and let us run some tests. Let us see how you're doing. And they'll show the mom an ultrasound, and the mom will go, I think I want to keep the baby. There are plenty of moms that walk out and go across the street to Planned Parenthood or wherever that happens. But she'll say, I this is a baby. I want to keep it. And my friend sees all those women who come in scared and then have the baby and then come back for services and healthcare and vaccinations and school supplies and food stamps, food items, or whatever charity they give out there, all the way up till first grade. My friend has seen all those women raise those kids, and she knows how special they are, and she knows how beautiful they are, and she knows how happy they are to be alive and be with their mom or whoever they're with. She sees it. And that's why she can't recommend that you go abort your child, that your child will have a better life. Because she sees the joy that these kids come into the world with and give. And she knows it's not her job to judge who's going to do that and who's not. So the whole you don't care about the baby after they're born, let's just stop that, okay? Let's stay on target and just listen to what we're saying on this issue. We could talk a little, we're running out of time here. We could talk a little bit about how the mother's life will change. And I just want to say it's kind of the same concept. It's like you don't really know how a child will change you until you have the child. And I think we talk too often about pregnancy like it's a disease. We do. In modern society, we act like pregnancy is a disease. But in fact, pregnancy is so biologically imperative for women that when women who don't get pregnant in their lives have health issues related to not having a baby, your body does a lot of work that keeps it healthy that is related to the child rearing and childbearing process. So like having kids, pregnancy is literally the healthiest thing you can do for your body. You can do all kinds of stuff that's not good, but so pregnancy is not a disease. But we talk about it like it's a disease. We're like, oh, we're asking mom, like, when are you going back to work? We want women to have a career. Like the baby's going to ruin the career. We talk about birth control. Like, it's the solution to this really big problem of babies. And we do talk about kids like they're burdens. I felt that way growing up. I thought kids were a burden. I didn't know anyone who had a kid because they wanted to. And I didn't think I did. And people always talked about kids in my world like they were just a pain in the ass and caused a lot of problems. And their lives would be so much better if they weren't forced to raise kids. So that I heard a lot of those messages. I thought it was true. But when I became a mother, I realized that's not true. That's not true at all. Kids are not a burden. They are not a disease. They make you better. And even if you have a child, we're going to address this issue of adoption next weekend as well. We'll make it our third and last in this series. But, even if you give your baby up for adoption, even if you're not the one raising your baby, there is still something so unquantifiable that bringing forth life brings, that it is rarely the punishment that the pro-abortion side makes it out to be. Oftentimes it is healing, even in situations like rape and incest, because a baby is a baby. A life is a life, no matter how small. Horton hears a who. And there's such value in it when you see a baby for the first time. It's absolutely overwhelming. It's absolutely overwhelming to see this person and every hope and every dream and every fear, every fantasy you've ever had is wrapped up in that tiny little body. And suddenly it's hope. It's hope. That's what it is. You see this baby and it's like, it doesn't matter for just a few minutes. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world. You're looking at this baby and you're going, you could make it. You could change everything. You could be the person who makes everything better. And most likely that kid won't be that person. You'll be wishing for coffee in a week. But that's the power of seeing life and seeing it be born. And we deny that to people when we tell them, your life will be better if you just abort this baby. We deny that experience. It's life-changing for the better. All right. I'm going to wrap this up. It's long. Thank you for sticking with me, you guys. Next week, part 3 of the abortion talk. That'll be it, I promise. And then we'll move on to other things. I really appreciate you listening in. Of course, don't forget to check me out at realkiradavis on Twitter or over Facebook at realkiradavis. And stay tuned to the FCB Radio Network for all kinds of goodies and treats and great shows and great talk. So proud to be a part of this group. And I will talk to you all next week. Until then, just take a little time to stop and listen to yourself. Bye, guys.